Here we go, everybody, and good morning. This could be the day we get answers. This morning, a House committee holding a key hearing on what went wrong in Benghazi, as we hear publicly now, and in some cases for the first time, from whistleblowers who say more could have been done to save American lives, and that the administration sought to cover up the botched response in the days and the weeks that followed the attacks of last September 11th. Good morning, everybody. I'm Bill Hemmer. Welcome here to America's Newsroom.
Great to be with you on this important day. Thanks so much. I'm Allison Camerata. In for Martha McCallum. 4 Americans with distinguished careers lost their lives in the attack. Ambassador Chris Stevens, Information Officer Sean Smith, Embassy Security Officers Glenn Doherty and Tyrone Woods, both former Navy SEALs. And we expect to hear from 3 witnesses with long careers in the State Department and CIA. First, there's Mark Thompson from the State Department's Counterterrorism Bureau. He's a former Marine, and he is expected to say that then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and top advisors tried to cut his bureau out of the loop as they and other Obama administration officials weighed how to respond and how to characterize the Benghazi attacks.
And then we will hear from Eric Nordstrom, diplomatic security officer, former regional security officer in Libya. He has said more requests to beef up security in that country before the attacks went unanswered by higher-ups.
And finally, there is Gregory Hicks. He was the number 2 at the American Embassy in Tripoli and possibly the last person to speak to Ambassador Stevens alive. Congressman Trey Gowdy, who will be at today's hearings on why Hicks's testimony is so important.
He's one of the few eyewitnesses. You know, I'm tired of hearing politicians guess at what happened or people theorize. I want to talk to the eyewitnesses, and he was in charge after the death of Ambassador Stevens. In fact, Ambassador Stevens' dying declaration, if you will, was made to Gregory Hicks. So he's a career diplomat who doesn't have a political bone in his body, and he's an eyewitness. And I want the American people to hear from him, and they can judge for themselves whether or not this administration has been honest and forthright.
And in many ways, that is what today is all about. Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel leads our coverage from the Hill. So what do we expect to hear from Hicks? What will he say, Mike?
Well, Bill, good morning. We expect Gregory Hicks will say that in February 1991, he took an oath to protect and uphold the Constitution, and today he is here to do just that. In testimony obtained by Fox News, Gregory Hicks will say, quote, "I'm a career public servant. Until the aftermath of Benghazi, I loved every day of my job." We also expect Hicks to talk about in the aftermath of the Benghazi attack when he became the #1 U.S. diplomat in Libya after the death of Ambassador Chris Stevens, that he was praised by President Obama and then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton for his performance. Bill?
You know, Mike, the issue of military assets in a response that either came or did not come in, for what reason? What will we hear about that with regard to Benghazi today, Mike?
Well, Bill, there's been tremendous back and forth in recent days about that, about whether or not military resources could have gotten there, perhaps to stop the second wave of the attack. We've heard that there were special forces ready to get on a plane to go to Benghazi to help their colleagues who were under attack. The Pentagon has said it was not possible. Some lawmakers have said, well, how can the Pentagon know that if they didn't know how long the attack was going to last? And so expect a lot of back and forth on that and whether the military resources were in geographic proximity to help the Americans who were in need. Ambassador Thomas Pickering led the review of the Benghazi attack.
Our board felt that nothing could have been done to relieve the initial attack. Subsequent attacks took place beginning about midnight but died out within an hour. And I think within those time frames, nothing could have been done.
You can also expect plenty of discussion about those famous talking points that Ambassador Susan Rice used on 5 Sunday morning talk shows after the Benghazi attack, where she suggested that an anti-Muslim video was responsible for this attack that killed 4 Americans.
Thank you, Mike. Long day there for you. We'll be in touch on the Hill. Mike Emanuel, thanks. On that last point, Allison is more on that, Allie.
Yeah, let's recap those talking points, because remember, 5 days after the deadly attack on the U.S. consulate in Benghazi, the U.S. ambassador to the UN, Susan Rice, went on all of the Sunday shows, and she spoke out on behalf of the Obama administration. She said this.
What happened initially was it was a spontaneous reaction to what had just transpired in Cairo as a consequence of the video that people gathered outside the embassy, and then it grew very violent.
All right, that moment was from Fox News Sunday, one of 5 Sunday news shows that she went on to say that the attack was not premeditated, but it stemmed instead from protests against that anti-Islam film. Well, 1 month later, Ambassador Rice pointed a finger at the intelligence community talking points for the faulty narrative. Then, by the end of November, that's 2.5 months later, Ambassador Rice met with Republican senators and acknowledged that there was no protest or demonstration in Benghazi.
To add to that, it took weeks for FBI agents to inspect the ruins in Benghazi. That happened on the 4th of October, 23 days after the attack. On December 7th, the feds questioned a key suspect for 3 hours in Tunisia with a Tunisian judge present. But a month later, January 8th, the feds released that person. January 17th, FBI Director Robert Mueller arrives in Libya to meet with senior Libyan officials. Now, 4 months after the attack, that is. It's not until last week, May 1st, 232 days later, the FBI releases photos of 3 men wanted for questioning, saying that they believe they were on the grounds of the Benghazi consulate at the night and at the time of the attack.
All right, let's switch gears now and take a closer look at the 4 Americans murdered that night, the victims here. First, there was Sean Smith. He joined the State Department in 2002. He was in Libya on a temporary assignment when he was killed, but he had a long career serving in Benghazi. He served in Baghdad, in Pretoria, in Montreal, and most recently, The Hague. Glenn Doherty, he was part of a reinforcement team from Tripoli that arrived at the CIA annex in Benghazi about 7 hours after the initial attack began. Tyrone Woods was a former Navy SEAL, and he was working as a security contractor at a CIA annex in Benghazi when the attack occurred. His father wants to know why security forces were told to stand down that night. Here he is on Hannity last night.
The most important question is why. We need to know why the decision was made so that this won't happen in the future again. And of course, you need to know who so you can ask the why question. But the why question, I think that, for the benefit of America, needs to be answered.
And Ambassador Chris Stevens is the first U.S. diplomat to be killed in a violent overseas attack since 1979. He arrived in Libya in May of 2012, less than a month before the Benghazi attack. He sent a cable expressing concern that the consulate could not be defended in the event of a coordinated attack.
So, Allison, those hearings begin a bit later this morning. One of the big questions, who airbrushed references to al-Qaeda and terrorism from the original talking points? Congressman Jason Chaffetz, he joins us live on that. He'll be at today's hearing, and we will speak to him live from the Hill in a matter of moments here in America's News.